Going now behind the mic with the voice of the Moose Jaw Warriors, James Gallo. Good season thus far in Moose Jaw, team currently in home ice position. Was this something that was expected going into the season?
I think outside in people are probably a little bit surprised by the Moose Jaw Warriors because they still are relatively a young team. The core based around 1998 born players. But I think inside, they knew that they were going to be good. I think they're probably maybe exceeding some expectations. But in the same sense, too, this is a team that's been developing from within over the past couple of seasons. They're comfortable with their players that they have. And they've got good chemistry. They've returned a lot of guys. They unfortunately lost two dynamics in Braden Point and Dryden Hunt. But they felt as though deeper up front to try and fill that void. You can never fill those two types of guys, but in the same sense, pretty deep up front and living up to their personal expectations is what they want to do.
You talk about the players that have departed, but you do have a first-rounder on that roster, Brett Howden, a first-round draft pick of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tell us about his impact and how he projects going forward as a pro.
Brett's a big guy, 6'2", 6'3", probably about 190. He plays that type of game. He plays hard, he plays physical, completely different the way that his brother played, Quentin Howden. Brett's more of a home plate type of guy, likes to drive the net, good character kid as well. Moose Jaw is not the biggest city in the world, but he's adopted the city. He's been around for the last 10 years, and he just loves the city. He knows what it's like to play for that logo on the front, and he's such a great character kid. He works hard for everything that he's gotten, and he's maybe a little bit of the identity of the team. Work hard. You're not going to get maybe the press and the praise that other teams get, but in the same sense, you'll be happy with what you get as long as you work hard.
Familiar name behind the bench there in Moose Jaw, Tim Hunter, former NHLer. Most longtime fans would recognize the name. Tell us how he fits into the picture as a head coach and junior and what he means to the team.
Tim Hunter's been great. Big adjustment for him going from obviously the NHL to major junior, but he did have a year of coaching with the Okanagan Hockey Academy in BC, and that was really big, and he was able to work with younger players during that year, and then from after that, he joined the Moose Jaw Warriors, and Tim brings such a wealth of experience. It's truly amazing to watch. It's hard for players to argue with a guy like Tim who played for 12, 13, 14 years. He coached longer in the National Hockey League than when he played. He knows what it takes to be successful in the National Hockey League. He knows what teams are looking for. And for these players to have that type of guy that they can lean on for advice, I think is really big. And you can see that influence on a guy like Brett Howden, who constantly talks to Tim on how he needs to be better and what Tampa Bay would like to see from him. And to have a guy like Tim on the Warriors bench and in the room, it's truly something that's pretty special to see.
I wanted to ask about your broadcasts because last year we had Mark Smith, who's one of the color commentators there on, and he's one of two color commentators, a three-man setup, not something you see in Major Junior very often, and Mark's between the benches. Tell us how that all plays out on the Moose Jaw broadcasts. Sounds like fans are getting some good insights there.
It's been great. We went to a new building about 6 years ago, and the company that I'm with showed a big commitment to try and take the next step. And we've got myself and a gentleman by the name of Derek Kletzel, who's a former Warrior captain and a Hall of Famer for the team. He sits up top with me, and he's probably takes the bulk of the load color-wise. But then we've got Mark between the benches, and we're really the only team that does it on a consistent basis, and it allows us to give fans a different perspective because the game happens so much faster down at ice level. Where we broadcast the game, it's slow and you can see plays develop, but where Mark is, he sees things happen instantly. And the one thing is that he can really describe to fans how big and how fast these players are. Sometimes that gets lost. They look small. A guy like Jaden Halbigawaks, who's a smaller player, or Braden Point, who's a smaller player for the Warriors, but you can see how fast and how skilled and how smart they are on the ice. And that's what Mark is able to translate to our fans. It's unique. And I think in this day and age, you try and step outside the box. That's the way we've been doing it in Moose Jaw. And kudos to my boss for allowing us to do that because it's been really fun.
Finally, I wanted to ask about the Moose Jaw Warriors in terms of their picture in the WHL with rivalries and whatnot. You have 5 teams in the province of Saskatchewan, and hockey mad province. Similar population to Nova Scotia, but 2.5 times the amount of major junior clubs. Who would be the biggest rivals for Moose Jaw, and is it basically a rivalry with everybody else in the province?
It depends. In terms of geography, nothing's bigger than the Regina Pats, who, of course, are the top-ranked team right now in the Canadian Hockey League. There's about 30 minutes that separates the two cities. It's a natural rivalry. It's one that, if you grew up in Moose Jaw, a Warrior fan, you grew up disliking the Regina Pats and vice versa. It's probably the biggest rivalry. The Swift Current Broncos are maybe about an hour and a half away from us. Bronco fans, they travel well, as do Warrior fans, to Swift Current, so the fans really get into that one. And probably the other one as of late would be the Prince Albert Raiders. The Warriors and the Raiders met a lot last year in the second half of the season, as well as in the first round of the playoffs. It was heated, it was emotional, it was intense, and it's kind of carried over here into this season. So if I had to say in terms of rivalries, it'd be Regina, Swift Current, and Prince Albert right now. But it's always there with Brandon, it's always there with Saskatoon, but those three, it's probably just a little bit more in the spotlight right now.
Thank you for telling us all about it, James, and best of luck to you and the Warriors going forward.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of your season.
That's James Gallo. He's the voice of the Moose Jaw Warriors, joining us behind the mic here. We've got a lot of group Screaming Eagles Hockey, 1270 CJCB.